live from Palm Beach, Florida. And as you, I imagine, know, if you were watching us or watching anything else, the 8 o'clock magic hour that was set by the president for Iran to either open the Gulf of Hormuz or be sent back into the Middle Ages. And that's the way he put it. And of course, the Democrats took him literally true and were horrified because they've invested a lot of money in Iran and sure don't want to see it destroyed. I mean, you think of all the billions that Obama gave them, some of it in cash, and all the money that Biden gave them. This has got to be one of the bigger Democrat investments. They also have to be, without any doubt, forget China or Russia. The United States has to be the biggest backer of Iran as it was killing Americans. So when Obama was sending over the cash in 2015 and 2016, Soleimani was in his glory. I mean, he was knocking off Americans left and right in Iraq. Oh, so you wonder, all of you bright ones are saying, gee, doesn't that sound like some kind of treason or isn't it illegal to fund terrorists? Yeah, but not if you're a Democrat and not if you're the prince. I mean, we all knew he wasn't on our side. He was on the Islamic side. I mean, one of the highest ranking officials in Israel told me that when I said, must be difficult to have a president you can't be sure of. And he said, well, no, I'm sure of him. He's working for them. That's in the fullness of history, that is very clear. What isn't clear is how he got away with giving him cash and nobody prosecuted him because nobody cares about the country anymore. So somewhere around 2 or 3 hours before the deadline, and although it was rumored earlier in the day, Pakistan delivered an agreement, a proposed agreement that would be a temporary one. America would hold off any form of attacking and agree to a ceasefire, and Iran would agree to a ceasefire for 2 weeks. And Iran would fully, completely open the Gulf or the Strait of Hormuz for all traffic, including American and Israeli, and immediately. And in exchange for that, there'd be a 2-week moratorium, a 2-week ceasefire on both sides. Well, so we'll see how that holds, and we'll see if they open it, and we'll see if the ships go through, and we'll see a lot of things, because we do have to be mindful of the fact that we have a history here of a country that is a pathological liar and has not kept any agreement. Now, despite all of the consternation by the lovers of Islamic extremism and Islamic terrorism in America, mostly known as Democrats, Iran was affected by the so-called excessive words of Donald Trump. Because here we're dealing with animals here. We're not dealing with human beings. I mean, we're dealing with people who are dedicated to the destruction of the Jewish people. They're dedicated to the destruction of the American people. We do not have to dig very far to find it. They yell it at us every Friday afternoon. And they've been doing it for 47 years. They've been killing us for 47 years, and we ain't done nothing. In fact, we just gave them money. They have got to believe up until now, and I think that's why it's so hard for them to negotiate. And when push comes to shove, we become suckers. I mean, just think of that. Biden gave them billions. Obama gave them money in cash so they could get it right to the terrorists without any problem. And they're yelling death to America and killing us, using our own money. Imagine I mean, you always scope out your enemy, right? Imagine what they think of us. Which is why I think they don't necessarily believe Trump. So we'll see how this goes through, and we'll have more on that a little later. We have a guest a little later in the show, correct, Ted?
Correct.
To discuss a number of issues, one of which is the president yesterday and the day before is when he's being accused of war crimes. And we're going to go kind of deep into that. I'm going to give you the benefit of the thinking on this, which has now only existed for 1,500 years as a staple of Western civilization and the law of war, which is now being reversed in order to threaten Trump with removal from office and prosecution of war crimes. And if you watch the last show, for the first time in the discussion of this, you probably heard something that nobody has mentioned before, that I will mention, and it really blows the whole argument up and turns it completely around. But how often does that have to happen before we start to realize what liars the press and the Democrats are? Well, let's get a little other news out of the way and items that are kind of important. There was a very, very interesting decision yesterday, back in February, I'm sorry, in the United States District Court for the Southern District of New York by Judge Jed Rakoff. Now, if you follow the news, that's a name you'll remember. Judge Rakoff has issued a disproportionate number of very, very important decisions. I don't remember how many I agree with, and I don't remember how many I disagree with. I probably disagree with more than I agree, I think, but that's not true. But I've rarely seen him write a decision that wasn't very well thought out and he very powerfully argues his side of it. In other words, he's a really smart guy. And yes, left-wing oriented, but still well within the confines of a Article 3 legitimate, honest judge. And one of the best known judges on the Southern District. And I think people who would agree with his philosophy would say probably one of the better ones. And I think in some ways he is one of the better ones. This decision, however, puzzles me. And it has wide implications for all of you. The case was United States versus Hepner. And what Hepner had done with his lawyers to prepare his defense, he had put all the documents they were going to use and analyze it, and for the theory of their defense, and on Anthropic's Claude. Now, Anthropic's Claude, of course, has become very controversial now with the military. But I don't know if this use of it is controversial. This is not the use that gets you into, it starts to try to develop a conscience and it tries to say what's right and wrong and it lies to you. This is just, it's purely analytical abilities. And computers have been used for this even back when I was practicing law and we were going to court on horseback. Or if the computer wasn't doing it, some group that you hired, or it was quite typical in a law firm, or even when you were a singular lawyer, lawyers gain a great deal by talking things over with each other. And that's why law firms are valuable. Law firms are valuable as opposed to individual practitioners, because it's much, much easier to know who to go to talk to in the law firm, so you can talk out at an issue. And no matter how smart you are, and no matter how skilled you are, that helps. And sometimes you go to a specialist who knows as much or more about it than you do. Sometimes you go to a rookie who can see things in it that you don't. Well, that's what they use AI for also. So he put all his material in AI. And government said, ha, 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 ha. You just waived the attorney-client privilege on everything you put in there. The conversations, if you had tapes, if you had this, if you had that, if you had this, you had that. And the lawyers said, that can't be true. I mean, we store things, for example, online, and they're privileged. When they raided my apartment and my building, and they took a lot of documents, I was representing. They raided my law office. You think I had an attorney-client privilege claims? And not only that, the attorney ethically has to raise the claim because it's not your privilege. So let's say I was representing Ted, right? At the time that they were going after Donald Trump. And in the course of taking files, they took files relating to Ted. Let's say he was involved in a secret but very important business deal. So the judge who had the case, well, we immediately went to court, and Bob Costello represented me. The judge who had the case appointed what we call a special master, in this case, Barbara Jones, a former federal judge. And she had the painstaking and long task of going through all the documents that were going to be turned over to the FBI. And she had to rule on our claim of privilege before they were turned over. So they would all be put in the computer. We get a computer printout. The other side never gets to see this, right? And we communicate with the special master. We look at 100 documents and we say, no, nothing wrong with those. Those are all they had to do with my security business, or they had to do with this. They're not privileged. But these 20 are. And the judge, or former judge, gets to look at them and rule. And she'll rule the defendant's correct. This is privilege. Or this seems like the wrong assertion of privilege, and she puts it aside. Now, on that, I can go to the judge and say, no, Barbara was wrong. But in fact, we after months and months and months, we reached complete agreement, because although some of the decisions we thought were wrong, we thought in the main she had done such a good job that the judge would affirm her. But everything's privileged. Now, the stuff that she put aside, just because I put it in a computer, the government didn't get to see. The privileged conversations with the President of the United States, the government didn't get to see. And since we were dealing with the Southern District of New York, which retained a certain amount of ethics when the rest of the Biden Justice Department went to hell, they, of course, never challenged that. There's no reason to challenge that. So, This is a strange decision for Jed, because he's a very good lawyer, and I don't understand how you. And maybe I should call him and ask him. He's willing to talk a lot about his decisions. I mean, he's quite transparent. He's probably kind of like Trump. That would get him really angry if I said that. Judge, could I talk to you about it? I mean, you always struck me as kind of like, even though on the other side, kind of like Trump. Wow. So if this guy took these documents and filed them, put them in a working file in one of the services, let's say Google has that, right? And I mean, many, the Google is the one that's used the most often. That's privileged. Can't get it unless you prove it's not privileged. Okay, but if you put it in AI for analysis, the judge determined it's like giving it to another person, because another person can get to see it. The other person will get to see it. It's like but it's the same thing if I put it in an iCloud, right? If I put it in an iCloud, somebody else could get to see it, but I'm not really sending it to somebody else. It's the same thing as if here's a great example. Suppose I hired storage space for privileged documents, and they have a special area for that they lock up. Government can't get that unless they make a showing it's not privileged. This will make it very, very hard to prepare for trial, as these lawyers have pointed out. It'll make it very, very hard for people to defend themselves if they don't have a lawyer. I mean, some of these cases are hard enough anyway. And finally, it's contrary. Well, the article could be a little bit distorted in their own. They are lawyers after all, and sometimes they push it in their own direction. It appears as if all the other decisions on things analogous to this have come out the other way. Other federal courts, they cite one by Judge Anthony Patty of the Eastern District of Michigan, that held that AI chatbots are tools, not persons, whereas Judge Rakoff held they were persons. So this is the argument the lawyers make. I don't think these are lawyers in the case, by the way. These are, one is the president and CEO of the American Arbitration Association, and he was former chief justice. She was a former chief justice of the Michigan Supreme Court. And the other was a law clerk on the Second Circuit, the court this is going to go to. If using a computational tool to process information constitutes disclosure to a third party, the implications extend to everyone who has ever stored a confidential document in the cloud or sent an email. Much legal work is compromised. Hepner is a single district court. It binds no one beyond this case. But it's an opinion, a well-researched, well-thought out, even if you don't agree with it, well-argued opinion by a judge who has a great deal of respect. And I'll be interested in following this. And there are, and not having all of the material in the case. This I have given you the best I could do. So I'd have to describe it as a somewhat superficial analysis, more alerting you to the problem. But what this sets up, should the Second Circuit affirm him, you'd have the two circuits opposed, and the Supreme Court, a case like this would surely take. That's when the Supreme Court takes it. If the Circuit Court agrees and reverses Judge Rakoff and says it is privilege, more than likely the Supreme Court will wait to take it, because if some judge in California has to make a decision and there's split circuits, it's very, very confusing. So you try to get a case like this resolved if they're split. Hungary is having an election. I think you might have noted that when we, in the earlier show, we put on J.D. Vance, who was campaigning with Viktor Orban in Hungary. Now, this is a very important election. Hungary, as you know, Viktor Orban is the biggest fan of Donald Trump in Europe, and the president probably likes him and respects him and agrees with him more than anybody in Europe. Certainly now, I mean, Italy has kind of fallen out of that position with their fear of supporting us on Iran. Well, Orban has been a 5-term prime minister, and he's up for re-election. The re-election is next week, and he's under very heavy challenge because the EU wants him out. He doesn't agree with the EU. He doesn't like the EU. He doesn't like the EU bossing him around. He doesn't agree with their immigration policies that have ruined all of their countries. He keeps people out of his countries who haven't been vetted very, very carefully. And I don't know that he keeps Muslims out, but I have a feeling he does. Now, that's all in the EU. That's all inner EU stuff, which is in and of itself of quite a bit of significance, because he's our main voice there. Although we do have a lot of support among the Eastern European countries. Go to the east of Hungary, and those countries will probably support us philosophically and ideologically more than they support the left-wing woke fops in Britain and in France, unfortunately in Italy and in Germany, and who are afraid of their own shadow, and are living on history. And the history is a long time ago, because starting with the beginning of the last century, they are all on crutches, and we supply the crutches. That the United States of America supplies the crutches. They'd all be speaking German if it wasn't for us. Had Hitler not had the United States come into the war, there'd be no doubt he would have controlled Europe. There'd be no reason why he wouldn't have gone across the channel and taken England, and then stop, and then make some kind of deal with America. Hitler had a lot of support in America. How about Lindbergh? How about Roosevelt? Kinda. Churchill pushed Roosevelt quite a bit, but it took a lot of pushing. And he wanted no part of having Jewish people here. Roosevelt's sainthood is one of those that is very flawed. And I think eventually they're going to take him down from Mount Rushmore when they find out how many communists he had around him. Strange combination, lots of communists around him and lots of Nazi sympathies. And the reality is, now, wake up your historical brain here. That's not as strange as it sounds. Hitler and Stalin were allies for a good deal of the preparatory war and the beginning of the war, the build up to the war, and then the war itself. Now, Hungary is the best friend in Europe of three countries. You're going to find this very strange. The United States, Russia, and China. Oh, man, foreign policy is fascinating. That's why I always loved it. How can you be the best friend of all three? We get annoyed with them because they get around this. They still buy Russian oil. They claim they don't buy as much. They claim they need it because they can't make a transition. I mean, they bail Russia out on a lot of other things. But more importantly, they do a lot of business with China. China can even put them in the Belt and Road program and build some big railroad for them and everything else. Now, the Russia issue has become a big domestic issue. And even his wife, Victor's wife, who is the foreign minister, has taken a position on China that's different, a little different than him. She said they're going to have to rethink their arrangements with China. China has moved into the acquisitive stage with Hungary. In other words, they gave Hungary a lot of money. They do a lot of business there. And now they've taken over nice big percentages of business, and they want to take advantage of that, which they are doing. So the whole idea of being with China is now become, aside from Viktor Orban himself, even among his, I think it's called the Fidesz party, even among his Fidesz party members, including his wife, there's a real movement to rethink the relationships with China. Now, here's a strange one. The opposition party, the Magyar party, which I think is an ancient name for the Hungarians, Ted, Magyars. They were called, I think they come from the Magyar, the core group in Hungary comes from a tribe called the Magyars. So the opposition party to Viktor, who's been in office for 5 straight terms, is the Magyar party. And for the first time in a long time, they have a competitive candidate, and the competitive candidate is pro-EU, vehemently anti-Russia, and strangely silent on China. Orban's wife has raised China as an issue in the campaign, but not his opponent. There are papers in the party opposing China, but he doesn't mention it. So I want you to think about why that's the case. Why doesn't the Magyar party, which could really make a big issue of what are considered favorable deals made by Viktor with China. On the other hand, Viktor could turn to a tremendous amount of money they got from China, because economically, Hungary is doing great, which is why it can say, go to hell to the EU. It's the biggest destination for Chinese capital in Europe. And they have good relations with the United States. So they're not getting hurt by the United States for that. So the The opposition, which is, I have a poll here. I want to make sure I get the poll right, because you're going to be very shocked when you hear this poll. Okay. The TISA party, that's the opposition party, and the candidate is Peter Magyar. He's named after Hungary. He's going to get elected. It's like you could say Peter Hungary. And he's younger and good looking. So for whatever that's worth. I don't know in Hungary if that's important or it's not. And quite articulate. And so is Victor. Peter is ahead by 19 to 23 points, and there's a week to the election. And they get elected by party. So the party is ahead 19 to 23 points. But the strange thing is Russia is a very big issue, and Russia is very unpopular now in Hungary. It was rather popular when Victor was kind of not as, you'd have to say, he really wasn't 100% supportive of what Russia did, but he didn't condemn it the way other European countries did. And he insisted that he should continue to get oil from Russia. And he blames Ukraine for interfering with the pipeline. And the body of evidence that's available seems to suggest that that's not true. But our vice president went there today, and do you have that piece? And endorsed him because he may be the only ally that we have in Western Europe. And when you start with him and then you start going east, that's where all our allies are: Poland and Latvia, Estonia, Lithuania, Czech Republic, Slovakia, Slovenia, Serbia, Srpska. Bosnia Herzegovina used to be, but they still are, but they're a Muslim country, so they're probably part of the big army that wants to take us over. Right. What do you see there, Ted?
We'll play just a small clip from.
Yeah, that's a small clip from the vice president. I mean, we played it earlier on the earlier show. Yeah. We played it. Well, the one where he talks to Victor. And it'll show you how much the administration is invested in this election. Now, it's a very, very strange thing. Should he be defeated, as it seems he will be, this will be a tremendous blow, mostly for China. Russia has already kind of absorbed whatever losses they've taken from Hungary. We've interfered with an awful lot of their trading with Russia because of Ukraine. It will still hurt Russia, but it won't. They've got so many other problems. This one is not the biggest. In China's case, this is their really only remaining tie to Europe. Western Europe has become very worried about China and doesn't want to do business with it. So this is it. Now, what is this the piece?
I don't expect, of course, the people of Hungary to listen to the Vice President of the United States. That's not primarily why I'm here. But I did want to send a signal to everybody, particularly the bureaucrats in Brussels who have done everything that they can to hold down the people of Hungary because they don't like the leader who has actually stood up for the people of Hungary. And I think it's important to say that. There are so many things that we could point to. There are so many economic pieces of cooperation, so much investment that's come into Hungary from the United States. I think Viktor Orban has been the single most profound leader in Europe on the question of energy security and independence. It is funny to watch prime ministers and leaders in some of the Western European capitals talk about the energy crisis when, frankly, they should have been following the policies of Viktor Orban in Hungary. And if they had, the energy crisis that they're experiencing would be a lot less bad, because what's going on in Hungary right now is that while, yes, energy prices are elevated, they're far less elevated here than they are almost anywhere else in Europe. And that's because of the leadership of the man who's standing next to me. And I think that leadership can provide a model to the continent. We want Europe to be successful. We want European families to be able to afford to heat their homes.
So there are different reasons for this, and this reminds me kind of the Cold War. And when I think of the Cold War, and I think of the best operator in the middle of the Cold War, it was Czechoslovakia, and they knew how to play everybody, particularly the United States and Soviet Union. Or you think about Kazakhstan, right next to China, right below Russia, and 1/3 of its business is done with the U.S. And we have major American oil companies that have been doing business with Kazakhstan very, very successfully for 20 or 30 years. So there are countries that can do that. The ideologues go crazy over that. But these people are business. They're real. It's sort of the guy who understood it and was always criticized for it, and maybe he went too far, was Kissinger. It's called realpolitik. It means you deal with whoever has been given to you, and you figure how to get the most out of them. And Orban is terrific at it. Now, why do we like him so much? We know why Russia does. We know why China does. He does business with them. Nobody else does. And he figures, wow, if I'm doing business, I'm going to make a fortune. And he is. He's probably economically one of the most solid countries in Europe. And so is Poland for different reasons. However, we need him because he's been anti-green. He's held back a lot of the craziest stuff they were going to do that would destroy the economies of Europe, because he is not a member of the green religion, the climate change religion, which is what it is. To believe in climate change, you have to have an exercise of faith, because there's no scientific basis for it, particularly as described in the green movement, where they make carbon dioxide the cause of the world heating, when in fact, if we don't have carbon dioxide, we're all going to drop dead. So Orban has been an opponent of the craziest, nuttiest green programs in Europe, which, go crazy nuts. I mean, the world was going to end 4 times for Greta Thunberg. Is it Thunberg, Ted? Thunberg, Bumberberg. I mean, in between every nervous breakdown she has, she predicts the end of the world. And then when it doesn't happen, I mean, poor girl. I mean, you're constantly predicting the end of the world. You're obviously going to be emotionally affected by it, right? The world's going to end in 2016. And then she appears, in 2017. I am absolutely positive that Gore said it was going to end in 2010. We got to go find that and see if that's true. So I remember that, but not with the precision where I'm going to stake my life on it yet. So who do we have? Tim Gaimi?
Tim Gamey, he's been on before, our friend.
He's the chairman of Colorado's Iranian-American community, so I'm sure he's watching everything very, very carefully. And Tim, thank you so. Please let me tell me how to pronounce your name properly.
And his audio is not on.
Okay.
You gotta unmute your mic. You gotta turn the audio on your side, Tim. So we'll come back to Tim here in just a second.
I think in all the interviews we've been doing, they're quite helpful, because they show how deeply the expatriate Iranian community is in America, and also how well they've assimilated, unlike some of the other Muslim communities that have been problems, like in Dearborn and now in New York. These people are like the old German Americans and the old Irish Americans and the old Jewish Americans and the old Italian Americans and Hispanic Americans. They come here of course, they love their country and they care about it and they're worried about it, particularly in Iran, where they probably have relatives back there that are killed. Whereas in the case of some of the other countries, they had relatives back there who were starving. The Irish came during the famine. The Italians came mostly from southern Italy, where there was great poverty. From Puerto Rico, the large migrations from Puerto Rico always took place when the Puerto Rico economy was bad. As soon as Puerto Rico's economy became good and they did big tax reductions for companies, all of a sudden, the Hispanic community in New York changed from Puerto Rican to Dominican, which I think is the majority Hispanic group in New York now. But for years, it was Puerto Rican. But they became Americans. It is a massive problem, not just in the United States, but all throughout the world, that by and large, many of the Muslim groups don't assimilate. And they set up Muslim communities and want Sharia law. That is, Iranian-Americans have been coming here in large numbers since certainly the revolution in probably starting in about 75, 76 and getting preparation for it. And then all throughout, massive numbers. Millions have left Iran.
So
But you don't find that among the Iranians. The Iranians have become melded in as part of America. But of course, like many of these people care about their country of their origin, which you are entitled to do as long as you love America more, which they do. They're going to be people who know the most about it.
Well, we have this is the
we have a
message
problem?
from President Trump. Well, we're waiting for Tim to reconnect here. We're going to have it in a second, but we wanted to put up President Trump's message. This he posted at approximately 6:30 p.m. Eastern, just an hour and a half before
the 8 o'clock. We were
8
thinking he would do it exactly at 8 o'clock when our shows, when
the
America's
show
Mayor Live starts, and we could begin it with
see if we could see if
Tim?
we got Tim. All right.
Can you hear us, Tim?
Tim's going to keep working on his
Okay, well,
connection
we'll
there.
keep-
We'll see if we can check in later.
We'll keep working on it.
Have you had a chance to read the statement, Mayor? I know we did last show. But I'm not
Well,
sure.
I don't know. Do you want to read the whole thing? Here's
No,
what
I just wanted to bring it up.
here's what Pakistan offered. Pakistan offered a mutual agreement on a 2-week ceasefire and immediate opening of the Strait of Hormuz to everyone, including the United States and Israel. And that has to be immediate. And so, in essence, if you think about it as quid pro quo, right? The quid is ceasefire, because Iran, the last 2 days, has been pounded like crazy. I guess Israel knew there might be a delay. And they took out massive numbers of economic institutions to degrade the economy of Iran even more, for the purpose, really, they're not going to say this, but for the purpose of trying to assist a takeover, degrade they believe they have killed large numbers of the Iranian National Guard and the Basij force, which is a voluntary militia. There are 700,000 of them, so they didn't make a big dent in the 700,000, but they took out the leadership. I mean, they're into like the third round now of putting a leadership together for those groups. And the dissident groups have done a good job of working on the outlying areas of Iran where the guards are not as numerous, where a lot of them have been killed, a lot have defected, and there are certain they call various things, but they're cities and counties and precincts. A certain number of them have been taken over. And remember, although the Kurds say they're not fighting because it implicates so many things with the Iraqi Kurds and the war between Iraq and Iran, they are. The Kurds and the Azeris and the Baluchis are all fighting in the parts of Iran that we don't pay any attention to, because the Iranians were not foolish enough to put too much of their military sensitive equipment there, because it probably would have been blown up, because the hostility with them is so great. And that goes back to the Shah. They were very hostile to the Shah as well. And we're probably one of the groups, although I'll have to check that out when we have Ali Razor on, they're probably one of the groups that supported the overthrow of the Shah, and but then never expected the Ayatollah. I mean, it's just hard for people to believe, but you had 5 major groups that did the overthrow of the Shah, and three of them were committed to a liberal democracy, and the Ayatollah's group participated. It wasn't the biggest group, participated in the efforts to overthrow the Shah. And the Ayatollah convinced him that he was not militaristic and that he was going to come back from Paris, where he had been exiled by the Shah. And he was going to come back, and he was going to be just a religious man. He was going to go to their holy city, which is their equivalent, let's say, of Rome, Qom. And he was just going to preach, and interpret. However, so I guess sort of like the strategy working the other way. Starting in the outskirts of Iran, for 4 or 5 years, he had been developing mullahs who were getting the people outraged at how much the Shah was offending the Islamic religion. And the Shah used to be a very strict Muslim, and he changed. And now that's the reason they were revolting. The other 3/4 were revolting because the Shah was a murderer and a thief. He may have, in fact, modernized the country in certain ways, but it was a dictatorship. If you were a member of another political party, they put you in the Ivan prison, which is the same place the Ayatollah uses. If you were a writer or a reporter that was writing anything about how much money the Shah was stealing, or his wife, the Savak would come and find you. And the Savak was invented by the second Shah because he was so crooked. And when he left, he took massive amounts of money from Iran. And how do you think the baby Shah has lived all his life? He's never worked. The guy has never done a job in his entire life. He's fooled around with the Ayatollah's regime, offered to fight for them. I mean, he would have done anything to have his little prince hat on, because he can't do anything else. And now he's trying to pretend that he has some kind of control over this, and it's all been smoke and mirrors. And he's kind of out of it now, and the president refers to him as a nice man, but not very kindly says, not up to the job. He's not up to any job. He's never done a job. He wants to run one of the more complex countries on earth right now, and he's never worked. He's been a guy who's lived off the money stolen by his father. And what recommends him for the job? He's a Pahlavi. One of the Pahlavis contributed to Iran, plundered it, turned over most of the profits from the oil companies to the Brits. There was a point in which Britain was taking out 85%. Iran was getting 15%. And then Britain taxed Iran on the 15%. So they were down to 2 or 3% from their oil. That went on for 15 years. Think of all the oil that Britain stole. I mean, they're a bunch of thieves. And now they don't want to get involved to help them. Well, thank God for the United States, huh?
Let's see, we have Tim one more time here. Tim, can you hear us? Tim.
How are you?
The audio is just a little bit.
Oh, Tim, you sound like a character in The Godfather.
We got to fix it.
There's a lot of static in the back. background noise.
Yeah, a lot of static on his end, so we'll see if he can fix that.
Okay,
If not, we'll get him on another night. We don't want to keep
Okay.
trying here.
So today was going to be, the president called it Power Plant Day and Bridge Day. Not the game. It was Bridge Day. The Israelis took out, and I think we participated, 12 bridges. Now, I don't know how many bridges they have in Iran, but the whole argument that was being made, who's that big mouth from California who looks so stupid? I mean, he really looks stupid on TV today.
Gavin Newsom?
No, the other guy, the guy claiming that Trump is committing war crimes.
Ro Connor.
Ro Connor, yeah, boy, does he look like a jackass? And he is today complaining about this. Now, this gets me really upset. Maybe it shouldn't. Sitting across from him is one of the smartest Fox reporters. And not all of them are. And a lot of them are controlled. Well, they're all controlled. But and I don't understand why she wasn't smart enough to think of this. So he's saying that if Trump were to attack the energy facilities en masse, and he were to attack the other facilities, like even the bridges, right, that are used by the civilians, that would be a violation of Section 51 of the Geneva Convention. She should have had the thing in front of her, because she's a lawyer, and she should have read it. And when she read it, what would happen to her is what happened to me. First thing when I read it, I said, my God, Iran's been doing that for 2 months. It says that you cannot hit facilities that are purely civilian if there's a mixed use. In other words, if a bridge is used to transport arms to the front, you can take it out. If an energy plant, let's say, is right next to a facility, a nuclear facility, you can take it out. If it's in the remote area of Iran and has no connection to the military, you can't. So it's a very dicey, difficult thing it's also very difficult to interpret in a country that is dedicated solely, and well, you would say solely, half to terrorism. Half their budget goes to terrorist groups that kill Americans, kill Jews, and kill everybody else the Muslims don't like. And they've been doing it for 47 years, and they don't hide it. They announce it every Friday afternoon. How this is an unjust war is crazy. This is crazy. But he just kept saying it. But she never said to him the following. Gee, it occurs to me that Iran's been doing this since the beginning of the war. Every night I read about how Iran has taken out a Kuwaiti energy facility, Dubai desalinization plant. They took out a desalinization plant in Qatar, their friend. And of course, some in Israel. They've done more damage to the Emirates than to Israel. And 80% of the damage are civilian facilities. They've attempted to hit our forts, our military compounds. The big one in Qatar have been unsuccessful. But they hit outside. And in many cases, they go after, there was a big attack yesterday on a big energy facility for Saudi Arabia, and an attack at a desalinization plant over the weekend. Now, these are non-combatant countries. These countries are not at war with them. It's not a war crime. It doesn't matter if they do it. That's okay. They can do it every day, 4 or 5 times. If they come over maybe if they go over to Europe, somebody will just take out a plant in Europe. That's not a war crime. But if America does it to a country that has been killing Americans for 47 years, that has been sponsoring terrorism all over the world, threatens to destroy us every day, every Friday, consistently for 47 years, and has lied and cheated and done everything it could to develop nuclear weapons that can eventually reach the United States. We have to wait until they destroy us? I mean, just because they're killing us is not enough. They have to destroy all of us first before we can respond? Of course not. I would also like to correct Pope Leo. Hey, Leo, if you were a Yankee fan, you'd know this because you'd be smart. But you root for the White Sox. And how many World Series have you won? 2, 1. Most of the people in Chicago root for the Cubs. So I got to give you a little leeway that you're a White Sox fan. So you suggested, not as specifically as Pope Francis, that there's no such thing as a just war anymore. Well, I mean, you kind of are overruling the two main theologians of Christianity. I mean, one of them fully accepted by the Orthodox and Protestant churches as well as the Catholic Church, and the other one pretty much accepted by them. If people don't know any of the theologians and fathers of the church, these two they're going to know. St. Augustine, in the 6th century, developed the concept of just war. And the concept would fit Iran very neatly, given all the innocent people they kill and all the innocent people they will kill if they're not stopped. And also, if you look at the way the president has conducted the war, it's almost as if he read St. Augustine's rules, 7 rules on a just war. Basically, you have to have a just cause. You have to be pursuing it for the purpose of achieving that cause. You can't be doing it just to acquire more land, which is why people went to war back in those days, right? And then St. Thomas Aquinas in the 12th century reaffirmed it in the Summa Theologica, 2nd book. I know we're going to overrule those Pope. They've been around a long time. And we're supposed to be a traditional church. We just make it up as we go along now. Now, just in case you're confused about the Catholic Church, I can criticize this because he didn't make this a ruling based on faith and morals. He didn't make the ruling as the Pope. It's called, he puts like a special seal on it. It's called ex cathedra, from the chair. And there are very few of those. Maybe a Pope, maybe that happens twice, not even. You can go centuries without a Pope doing that. So that where people get confused about the authority of the Pope on what you believe and not believe. He can suggest, he can tell you what he thinks is best. Like on that, you shouldn't go to war. You should get killed instead. You shouldn't go to war against Iran. You just should wait until they kill all of us, or they torture a few more, take some more hostages, or destroy the Jewish people, which is their first goal, because they're smaller than Americans. Or we should do our usual suck up to the Muslims, which the Vatican is extremely guilty of. They've even given Catholic churches to the Muslims. I mean, these priests who do it have never read the Quran. I mean, even if we don't get into the really gory stuff in the Quran, Muhammad, about a year before his death, wrote a phrase saying, "Don't be friends with Christians and Jews." And we're giving our churches to people who don't want to be friends with us. Well, of course, it gets a little worse when he says that you have every right to kill them. And also recommends that if you have time, it wouldn't be a bad idea to torture them as well. The Quran is a handbook on murder, done by a very successful murderer, a very successful mass murderer. And if you look not so deeply, just a little cursory view of how they spread the religion, they didn't have a Peter and Paul. And they didn't have these fathers of the church and who went and taught and persuaded and martyred themselves, example of great love. A good example would be how they took the country we're dealing with now, Iran. Iran was until right after Muhammad died, was Persia. In fact, it was Persia until the Shah changed it. And it was Zoroastrian almost exclusively Zoroastrian, which was an established religion for 1,000 years. The Abu Bakr, who was the successor to Muhammad, and I'm sure these plans began with Muhammad, but Muhammad successfully captured Saudi Arabia, captured the major cities, killed his opposition, mass murder of Christians, Jews, and of his own people, the Quraysh people, because they expelled him, probably in the middle of one of his fits on the ground. So his two successors invaded Persia, committed their first genocide, which was to be done over and over again. They eliminated, to the extent they could, every Zoroastrian in Persia. The ones that didn't get eliminated fled to places like Iraq and where they are now. I think there were only 70,000 that remained in that kind of came back into Persia over the years. And then they forced everyone to be Muslim. They destroyed the small but significant Jewish community in Persia. They killed all the Christians, and Iran became not by process of persuasion, but by threat of death, Muslim, which is essentially the way almost every other country, particularly in the Middle East and in Africa. There's a little bit more persuasion, they argue, in Asia, but they argue that, and then others argue, nope, they were killing people there too. Now, if you think that's 1,500 years ago, if you think that stopped, take a look at the African map and take a look at all the wars that are going on in Africa, and find me one that isn't Muslims killing Christians. Maybe there's one or two. So what the Iranians are doing, the Iranian, we say, oh, they're crazy and they're just a small group and the vast majority are this and that, the other thing. Well, it is true. The vast majority are regular people. They probably don't even know most of the things that I'm saying. One of the books I read by a Muslim critic, a scholar, theologian, a scholar, he said, I hope Muslims don't read what their religion is really about, because they do far more killing if they read what it was about. They sort of have to ignore it and make believe that Muhammad didn't say that, or that the people who came after them, who wrote these books called hadiths that govern their, like the 72 virgins in heaven are a combination of the Quran and the hadith. The Quran says that when a hero dies and kills for the faith, he'll go to a special part of paradise where he'll spend the rest of his life having as much sex as he wants, as much wine as he wants. Remember, Muslims are against drinking, except you're up there. And then when you go into hadith, there's a big argument over how many and why they pick virgins. I mean, it gets a little ridiculous if you start doing the arithmetic, right? There's basically one man for one woman. There's going to be all these 72 virgins up there. Ted, do you think with all the killing that the Israelis and the Americans did of all these Muslims, like these really strict Muslims, that they ran out of virgins in heaven?
Right, the math doesn't add up.
There was once a thing on Saturday Night Live when it was a decent show. It was some kind of a thing. They're making fun of Bush, and Bush is trying to persuade them not to be Muslim. And he said, well, did they ever tell you what these virgins look like? We're going to take a short break and we'll be right back. Man, that was blasphemous. U.S. Army Major Scott Smiley paid a high price serving our nation. Scott was leading his platoon in Iraq when a blast sent shrapnel through his eyes, leaving him blind and temporarily paralyzed. Scott would become the first blind active duty military officer before medically retiring years later. Thanks to friends like you, the Tunnel to Towers Foundation gave Scott and his family a mortgage-free, specially adapted smart home. Show your support for America's heroes now. Donate $11 a month to Tunnel to Towers at T2T.org.
Are you ready for some action?
I'm ready for action.
Get the Elite TV plan only through the portal. 218 channels, and it's only $69.95 a month,
Wow.
including your free portal.
That's cheaper than everyone else.
Your favorite sports, movies, news,
Wow.
even daytime dramas. We're talking about ESPN, OAN, Newsmax,
Wow.
channels you can't get anymore in certain areas.
Compared to the competition, this is a way better deal.
Endless selection. Not to mention all the free music channels. There's over 700 premium and classic movies all ready to go.
Wow.
Plus, they got catch-up TV that allows you to go back and watch what you've missed or want to watch again. Cut your cable in half and get twice as much for free.
Way more channels for half the cost.
After the first year, the subscription then drops to $57.95 monthly,
Wow.
where you change or upgrade anytime. Go to QUXNow.com and get yours today. Use promo code RUDY. Act fast.
These deals are selling.
Here we are, pretty much at the beginning of the process here at this pristine, I call it a laboratory. It's not like a factory, it's like a hospital. This is the beginning of the process for roasting. Deep grain, very good quality. Most people don't use this quality. We deal with small farmers because they like to know who we're dealing with. They give us the highest quality, all organic, non-GMO. You should know all Arabica beans, no Robusto, all Arabica. They're going to go into the roaster, and it'll get roasted for about 20 minutes or so. Oh my goodness, look at these. My goodness. You're going to want to specially order these. This is what goes into Rudy's coffee.
So I imagine that President Trump has to be a little relaxed tonight because they reached a decision. It is clear that he did not want to inflict on Iran the punishment that he knew our military could do. It's very hard. I mean, it's very, very, very hard because you know firsthand how it's almost impossible to accomplish that without. You can't do it without killing civilians. And these people, oh, by the way, speaking of war crimes, what they were suggesting that they were going to do was a war crime. You can't put civilians in front of a military target to defend yourself. So what a bunch of cowards. I mean, basically, if you think of what is considered essential manhood and bravery, it's to protect men, to protect women and children. These guys let the women and children die. I mean, it's perverse. That's a war crime under the Geneva Convention. Never mentioned. I mean, Hamas did it for 2.5 years, and nobody. They have an indictment of Netanyahu that the mayor of New York, Mr. Mandupi, is going to arrest Bibi when he goes there, and I've offered to go with Bibi. I do not believe a New York City police officer will arrest Bibi. It would be an illegal order, by the way. And the cop could actually be prosecuted federally for following the mayor's order. The law of the United States is supreme, says the United States Constitution. Gee, we fought a civil war over this. People should know this, right? And the piece of paper that they have to arrest him comes from a court that America, that's in Washington, right? They don't recognize. We don't recognize the International Court of Justice, which means they have no jurisdiction. That piece of paper is worth nothing. So it's a false arrest of a foreign official. It's an assault on a foreign official. That's a federal crime. A cop could be arrested, the captain, the entire precinct. And you don't think Trump would do that if he had to? I wouldn't want to see that happening to the New York City Police Department, because they'd only be doing it but then again, they shouldn't become Nazi prison guards, right? And go along with this communist and Muslim terrorist supporting poor excuse for a mayor. The New York Post wrote an editorial today saying that the president is justified in this war, pointing out the 47 years of Iran's attacks on America, and basically coming to the same conclusion I've come to, should be done a long time ago. And there'd be a lot of Americans that would have filled out their entire lives, and a lot of families that wouldn't have been destroyed, because it wasn't just Soleimani that killed thousands of Americans. They've been killing Americans since they took hostages. This is a long time that they have committed acts of war against us that we didn't have the courage to do anything about. So the Post supports him. This is why it must be hard being president. You probably could have put down 10 editorials, all of which tell him to do something different. The Wall Street Journal tells him, yes, he should do it, but not too much. Don't do too much. Hit him. You have every right to hit him. You got to stop him. They've criticized him when he didn't. They're going to criticize him tomorrow for not going forward. I guarantee you. Let's see if I'm right. But the obvious solution is to discriminate between different types of infrastructure. Obviously, these people are not generals. They never conducted a war. Targeting can allow it to do so without bombing every power plant in the country. I guess that's right. You don't have to bomb every power plant in the country, just many of them. Now, there was a good article in the Post that I underlined and found, and it's from a guy who goes back and forth, Walter Russell Mead. With a name like that, he should be right all the time, right? Even one of my, like, it's your professor, Walter Russell Mead was my professor. His conclusion is, this is the last sentence. He goes back and forth, different arguments about what Trump did right, what he did wrong. Whatever one thinks of Mr. Trump and his decision to initiate hostilities, a quick and comprehensive American victory offers the best hope for a peaceful future in the Gulf and beyond. And of course, that's true. The longer these people hang on, the more they are going to, in a clever, conniving way, figure out how to do damage. And then the press, like the New York Times and all of the European newspapers, will say, and I mean, you probably don't read those things. I have to. They actually are saying that the Iranians are winning the war. How could you be winning a war when you're on day one? Like, this would be like you'd be saying the Germans won the war and Hitler was killed on the first day. Oh, but the Germans are winning, and the entire general staff is gone. And America had 13 casualties, and they say 5,000. You're not winning that war. Oh, they shot down one plane. Yeah, you know how many planes like that have flown over there? 5,000. What's the percentage of 1 out of 5,000? I mean, they allowed us to take out all of their nuclear facilities, not once, but now 3 times. And just today, we went back to Charge Island and got rid of all of their military facilities, just in case there were any left, in case we had to go in. So the faster we can get this over with, the better. And in that sense, I shouldn't be, and maybe it isn't right, but I almost was hoping that we got to do what he had to do tonight and convince them that this is over, or get rid of enough of them so that the dissidents and the people can take over, because they're not there yet, but they're doing a better job than is reported, because it won't be reported until they finally take over. And the more you don't know where the breaking point is, the more of their people you get rid of, the more opportunity there is for them to take over all the police stations and the facilities and the guard posts. And you might remember, Israel did a 4-day campaign of taking out the IRGC posts all around the country. So many of them have been bombed. And they've been hitting economic targets. The military budget for next year is going to be $1.7 trillion. Of course, the Democrats are against it. The Democrats would rather give them away money to illegal aliens who rape and kill Americans than defend us. That's what they're complaining about, that all the dependency programs are going to be cut for the military. I will guarantee you that you could cut the American dependency programs by 50% and not a single poor person in this country will be hurt. The only people that will be hurt are people who steal from the poor people. I want you to take like a big view of this. The Great Society started around 1967. I don't know. I'm going to find out someday how much they put into poor America, like even just into Harlem. Enough money to make it Monaco 5 times over. People are still poor. Money went somewhere. Why do you think Charlie Rangel died worth $37 million? Working? Charlie stopped working when he was about 30 years old, and he became a politician. And then he put $37 million in his pocket. You know how many Charlie Rangels there are? And that's the money that would have saved their people. So they really are creeps. They screw their own people. We've paid to end poverty about 4 times over. But they have to keep poverty because they need dependency. And there are a whole host of reasons. A lot of it gets really solidified through Marxism, but some of them know that, some of them don't. NATO, I don't know if NATO's going to go completely or not. They certainly are not allies. The definition of an ally is a partner. I support you, you support me, and we're allies. If I support you and you don't support me, you are a traitor. Right? We make a deal. I'm going to support you. You're going to support me. I support you. You don't support me. So what's England? France, Italy, and worst of all, Spain. And if they get attacked, are we going to go ask our young men and women to die for them? It's like the question that President Trump asked in his first term when he was with Prime Minister Abe of Japan. He repeats this quite a bit. I don't know if you've heard this. He said, I was talking to my friend Abe, and they were very close friends. And I said, I don't understand this, Prime Minister. If you get attacked by China, I am committed by treaty to send American troops over here and die for you and help you. But if I get attacked by China, you don't have to. He said, that's right. And I'm trying to change it, Mr. President. And he was trying to change it. The legislation existed at the time that he died. And now Takaichi, the new prime minister, is working very, very hard to get that done. And that's why I didn't mention Japan in the group of allies who turned their back on us, because by law, Japan cannot engage in war because of the restrictions we put on them after the Second World War. Now, they can defend themselves, but they can't defend somebody else, which in the world that we live in becomes hard to defend yourself because you defend yourself with these agreements, right? I'll defend you, you'll defend me. Now, this is a big loss because China is a latent Israel. China is an ally worth having, meaning they know how to fight, as we found out in the Second World War, and as the Chinese have found out for 1,500 years. I guarantee you, I worked in Japan, I had businesses in Japan, and I spent some time in China. The Chinese are deathly afraid of the Japanese. It's a little country, just a few Japanese, but every time they've gone to war, Japan has destroyed them. And they're not nice. They don't have a Geneva Convention. Geneva is not in Asia, right? Maybe now they'll follow it. So Ted, I think we'll give people a chance to to get some rest and see what happens tomorrow. I'm very anxious to see if the boat goes through the canal. I hope those Iranian elites who we showed last night, the Iranian very religious Muslim girls with no clothes on, I hope they're back in where they belong, Iran, where they have to put things over their face, and all the other women there have to do that. But they end up making millions in the United States and walking around like hoes, right? Yeah, and trashing the United States, and the regime works with them because they've gone back and forth 4 times. So what is this religious thing that they? But they must really believe some part of it because they do seem to want to die, which is the thing that makes them scary in terms of having nuclear weapons. I mean, Ronald Reagan used to say, the most dangerous thing with mutually assured destruction is if one of the sides is irrational. Well, they're irrational.
Right.
Trump
understands that. And that's why he's made the moves he's made. And now we'll see here if within the next 2 weeks we can get something here, get something done that assures Iran will not be able, won't be able to procure these nuclear weapons.
Anything new that we left out?
We're just following some election results here tonight. It is a Tuesday.
Yeah, last week we didn't do well.
So there's a special election in Georgia. Of course, that's Marjorie Taylor Greene's seat that she's vacating at the end of the year, and the Republican, which is expected, will win that seat. Clay Fuller against Democrat Sean Harris. That's in the
weren't the Democrats thinking they might win that?
No, it's a heavy Republican area. They thought they might have a shot because
she created so much
that and
turmoil, right?
And Democrats are expected to do well this year, so I guess they would consider this good in terms of Democrats coming within 12 points in a rural Georgia district.
We can take 12 points as long as we have the vote.
And so we're following that Wisconsin Supreme Court election.
Wisconsin Supreme Court wouldn't have any chance.
And we'll see how that turns out.
Well, don't. They're going to end up. They're going to end up electing a. They're going to end up electing a Democrat. Now, here's what's interesting: aren't they politically, domestically Republican and federal representatives Democrat? Like New Hampshire has a veto-proof Republican state government, and they have 2 Democratic senators and 2 Democratic Congress members.
Yeah. Wisconsin's.
It's weird. Wisconsin, same thing. Wisconsin has a heavy group of Wisconsin Democrats,
right,
in the legislature,
right, and they voted Democrat, but it's a swing. It's definitely a swing state.
Well, Trump won it, right? Both times. Trump
won it. Some say all 3 times.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Definitely 2 times.
Far be it from me to say that he didn't win. I used to say the number he wanted by.
Right. No, Wisconsin's an interesting state. Very conservative, I would say, socially. So you can get, certain Republicans.
The only one there that seems to be hard to get back, if we ever had it, is Minnesota. Right. I mean, Minnesota's the only state to vote against Ronald Reagan when he ran for re-election.
Right.
So I always thought Minnesota was like a sort of an outpost of the.
Yeah, it's a unique kind of vote.
Communist Party,
the Democrat Party up there, and even now different than Reagan right now with the huge population from Somalia. Minnesota's definitely even much different now than it was 50 years ago.
And what about and there's one more election.
That's right. Georgia, the Wisconsin Supreme Court election, and then the special election in Georgia.
Was there only one congressional?
There's some state Senate races
happening. Okay.
But the 2 big ones.
Well, I don't think we have to worry about those. So let's make sure that we pray that all of this works out. Let's pray for the people of Iran, that whatever happens, the effect on the civilian population is minimal. They've suffered enough. And, even with this, and there were contrary articles done saying some people in Iran are now, worried that Trump is not going to come through for them, and that the regime is going to still be there, and now they're going to be tortured. The regime will be worse. His proposition, his statement that they would rather have us bomb and take the risk of getting killed now rather than living a life of oppression still exists. It's very hard to take a poll there, but to the extent that human rights organizations have done it, and they're not pro-Trump or pro-Republican, the support for the regime is about 20%. Now, that's a lot of people, particularly if they're the ones who have the guns. But the vast majority of people in Iran to this day would rather see an attack and an overthrow of the regime. Now it gets complicated when he says things like, "We're going to destroy your civilization." They don't want to have nothing. I mean, they don't want to wake up the next morning. It's like they're on the backside of the moon. But he didn't mean that. You got to understand it. That's part of his negotiate. That part of what got Iran, and if not Iran, the countries around Iran, like Pakistan, nervous as hell. So far it's working. My goodness, he's turned it around so much. It's remarkable from where we were to imagine if this all was happening under Biden, we would have surrendered months ago and left all our troops there to get killed. You think he would have tried to save the pilot? How many did he let die in Afghanistan? In fact, there were articles written then that we had given up the doctrine of no man left behind. So let's pray for the people of Iran. Let's pray for the people of Israel. And let's pray for the people of Ukraine who are dealing with their own pathological killer, but not irrational. Even Xi Jinping is a pathological killer, but not irrational. There's something much more dangerous when you don't want to live. And pretty clear from the way the Ayatollah conducted himself at the end, he didn't really care. I mean, he probably does really believe. I didn't say he probably believes. Boy, is he disappointed. Whew, thank God. And let's pray for the United States, of course, greatest country. I don't have to tell you this, God, but pray for us to maintain ourselves as the greatest country on earth, and pray for our president, who's made very, very wise decisions, but he needs your help. So we'll see you tomorrow night. God bless America.
It's our purpose to bring to bear the principle of common sense and rational discussion to the issues of our day. America was created at a time of great turmoil, tremendous disagreements, anger, hatred. There was a book written in 1776 that guided much of the discipline of thinking that brought to us the discovery of our freedoms, of our God-given freedoms. It was Thomas Paine's Common Sense, written in 1776, one of the first American bestsellers, in which Thomas Paine explained, by rational principles, the reason why these small colonies felt the necessity to separate from the Kingdom of Great Britain and the King of England. He explained their inherent desire for liberty, for freedom, freedom of religion, freedom of speech, the ability to select the people who govern them. And he explained it in ways that were understandable to all the people, not just the elite. Because the desire for freedom is universal. The desire for freedom adheres in the human mind, and it is part of the human soul. This is exactly the time we should consult our history. Look at what we've done in the past and see if we can't use it to help us now. We understand that our founders created the greatest country in the history of the world, the greatest democracy, the freest country, a country that has taken more people out of poverty than any country ever. All of us are so fortunate to be Americans. But a great deal of the reason for America's constant ability to self-improve is because we're able to reason, we're able to talk, we're able to analyze,